Welcome back to Civilnet. I'm your host, Patrick Elliott, and I'm delighted to be joined today by my friend Hovsep Patvakanyan, who's the director of the EBRD Investment Council of Armenia. Hovsep, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to be discussing, as I mentioned, some stuff that I'm rather excited about. I've been doing a lot of military stuff lately, which isn't my expertise, but the entrepreneurship side of things is, as you can see on my face, is what I'm excited. I'm a big believer in Armenia's potential to become a trade and investment hub. We do have quite some serious roadblocks that we need to overcome. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with the Investment Council, and what are some of the main projects that you're pushing to make Armenia more competitive?
At the Investment Council of Armenia, we mainly work on legislative reforms that target a betterment of the investment climate and business environment in Armenia. And we work in the format of the public-private dialogue adjacent to the Deputy Prime Minister Tigran Khachaturian. So the way it works, we have the SME Council that comprises 11 business associations in Armenia. They represent over 7,000 businesses in Armenia. They bring us issues of legislative nature that we can fix and the reforms that are needed to better the business environment. And then our team of lawyers and economists work on the legislative reforms package that is further presented to the Ministry of Economy and the Deputy Prime Minister. So far, we've had around 22 reforms in the tube, and over the past 15 years, we've had around 40 reforms adopted. But besides this, we also work with the Ministry of Economy directly to see what other technical assistance can be provided to them in terms of the niches that they see and the capacity they see needed for the development of certain vision and strategies on their own. So far, some of the two areas we've been focusing on is the export promotion, export-oriented reforms that we can implement, because in our and the other one refers to financial market development. When it comes to the export promotion, export-oriented reforms, this has been identified as one of the largest areas of the issues that come from. I'll try to break it down, what we have at the moment. For Armenia to be considered as an investment hub, obviously the investors will not be focusing on internal market. It's a very small market. Yeah. So they need either to invest in area that is logistics irrelevant, which is technology or renewable energy, or they need to invest in certain manufacturing sector, in certain manufacturing pillars, where they believe the logistics can be smooth. Logistics is one of the biggest issues in Armenia. Yeah. Let me disentangle why. At the moment, we try to position Armenia as the place where it's a member of Eurasian Economic Union on one hand. On the other hand, it has deeper agreement with the European Union. It has a very nice geographic location, so it gives access to over 1 billion consumers over the world with lowered customs duties. And this is kind of the official positioning of Armenia. But when it comes to the work on the ground, what we see is once something is manufactured in Armenia, it should reach to the destinations that the investors had in mind. And when we disentangle this into three areas, into the air cargo, into the cargo by land, and into the train infrastructure. The train infrastructure is fully out because we are not integrated in any of the modules existing in the region. When it comes to air cargo, it's expensive, obviously, and we can focus only on the high value added products when it comes to exports through air cargo. In case we want to look at the local companies to implement the air cargo to certain destinations, and let's say the government wants to subsidize these routes, we realize that the European Union has put our civil aviation in the blacklist. So even if it is registered here, a company, air company, or a fleet, we can't really go to Europe. We can't really go to the United Arab Emirates because they've put us in the blacklist as well. So the only way to use the air cargo is through the other airlines. But besides this, when again we try to reach out to the West through these international airlines, Turkey has blocked their airways, the air. So
yeah, the airspace.
And the airspace. So the way it works, every time what we hear, and we've talked with many CEOs of the international air companies that have cargo in their passenger fleet, is that every time they need to compile a pile of documents where they need to specify what kind of products they transport, and they may or may not receive the permit 10 minutes before the flight.
Wow.
What they do usually is they take another route which is more expensive, which makes this route even more expensive. For you to understand an average price for 1 kilo of products to Europe, and by Europe I mean Benelux countries, let's focus on this, ranges from $6 to $10, which is much.
Yeah.
The other route that can be considered is to go from Yerevan to Poti, or from Yerevan to Batumi, and then to take the ferry to Burgas or to Constanza, and then to continue to the European countries. But again, the ferry goes once per week. Usually when we were talking with the textile manufacturers, with the fresh produce manufacturers, they need their products to reach the final destination within 2-3 days.
Sorry, Hovsep, can't you, I mean, it's one thing that I brought up with Economy Minister Kirobian is why not invite even more companies and diversify so we have a ferry every single day, have them competing on the same route?
The ferries are not within our area of pushing forward, because this is something that goes from Georgia. But I believe from time we will see the progression. It depends on the amount. I mean, it's pure business.
Yeah.
If they see a higher volume of products going through, or if they see the higher demand, that's what they will do.
Yeah, they'll increase the frequency.
Why from Armenia this route is now very much developed? Because usually, as I said, it takes longer time to reach, and it takes a bit more expensive than if you do it through the Georgian trucks or through the Turkish trucks that goes from Armenia to Georgia, and then from Georgia to Turkey, and then from Turkey through the land to the rest of the Europe. So we are in a kind of a dead-end situation where we need first, in our opinion, to negotiate very intensively for us to be out of the blacklist of the European Union. And we've seen that this has been done for Moldova, because Moldova was also in the blacklist. But they've made the exception for 5 airlines to fly to the European Union, even though Moldova as a country was in the blacklist.
How do we get out of this blacklist entirely, rather than just get a couple airlines through?
When we talked with the respective authorities to understand what was the reason why we were ending up there, we realized that there were too many pillars. First is they believed that the licensing process by the civil aviation to the local companies was shady. No security norms were adhered to. But then, even now, when those norms are in place, what they were saying is that, you don't have the capacity at the civil aviation to monitor and to see whether the security norms are adhered or not. So even if we believe that your licensing process is now in place, is in compliance with all the possible international standards, but you don't have enough people to monitor the security related matters. So I believe these things that we were trying to solve were not in the core is not in the legislative nature, but rather in the nature of going there and negotiating with the respective authorities, enhancing the capacity and reforming the institutional capacity of the civil aviation to be able to normalize the situation.
As far as you know, is that being done? Like, is there intensive negotiation?
I'm going to discuss this in an hour. Okay, actually.
So you'll update us.
Yes. The other issue comes when you want to move southward through Iran to Gulf countries. At the moment, it's very hard to do it through Iran, because when you want to pass the Armenian truck through Iran, they don't allow it. What they are saying is only Iranian trucks can pass through Iran. If you want Armenian truck to pass, you'll need to pay the difference in diesel price. You'll need to pay so-called road payment. And it's a Pandora box for the local truck owners, because the rules are not very much set forward. So it's not easy for them to go. In reality, in practice, what they do, they reach out to the border, they unload their products, they load it with the Iranian truck on the border, and then the Iranian truck continues the route.
So that's time wasting, expensive.
That's time wasting, that's expensive. That is not applicable to many products. Imagine that if you have very fragile products, you can't do the unloading all the time, and you need to control this unloading all the time.
Wow.
The other way to reach the Gulf countries is through the local Fly Arna or through Fly Dubai. But Fly Dubai has cargo only with 100 kilograms. Fly Arna has the cargo of only 1.52 tons. And when we were meeting with the fresh produce owners, this is something that is in high demand in the Gulf countries. The strawberries, the berries, apples. Yeah. What they were saying, the strawberry producers, they were saying that they had at the moment they have a demand from the supermarkets in Dubai for 4 tons per week, but Fly Arna can make it only with 2 tons per week. So it's basically, imagine the situation is there. What we position always, that Armenia is the hub. It needs it's a place where you can reach out, but you don't have the capacity to reach 4 tons of strawberries to the Gulf countries because of all these possible bans that exist. At the moment, what we try to do, we try to find a way the government can, in a way, subsidize two-way route, be it air cargo, be it trucks, that help us reach the destinations of our interest. Because what we did, we've sat and had a talk with around 112 Armenian producers, exporters, to see what was the impact of transportation costs on their deals. What we realized is in the past 3 years, they had participated in different expos, they had the leads, they had the negotiations, they had the deals on paper, but these deals didn't go through because of the high transportation costs. And when we did the estimate, within 3 years, this amounted to around $42 million, which is a huge amount.
Lost, you mean? Completely lost. In lost profits.
Lost.
That's crazy.
When we try to evaluate how much the impact will be if we lower the transportation cost by 20%, which will make Armenian products more competitive, obviously. We've estimated that the inflow of the value added in terms of the fiscal inputs, in terms of the new taxes generated, will be around $95 million. So with these calculations in mind, we'll try to offer a subsidy model at the moment that can, when you do the cost benefit analysis, it simply cancel each other out. The other part we can't do, but we can voice, obviously. In a couple hours, we'll have the meeting with the civil aviation. Also, we'll have the meeting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to speak of very technical issues that can be solved it's a low-hanging fruit very easily. And then on a broader scale, what can be negotiated and how things can be moved forward. I know for a fact that in January, this is the good news, in January, we'll have the audit committee from the United Arab Emirates visiting Armenia. And they will discuss the possibility of taking Armenia out of blacklist. So the companies registered here will be able now to fly to Gulf countries easier.
Do we have any Armenian logistics companies by air cargo? For example, I hate to use this example, but you have Azerbaijan Silkway Airlines that is actually huge, and this is a national security issue for us as well. Is that we're not able to get a lot of the raw materials that we need to domestically produce the stuff that we need to survive, let alone to thrive economically. Why not deregulate that section and make it easy to set up that company, of course, with the required safety standards, but make it so they have preferential treatment at airports, they have better crew, I don't know, to incentivize that rather than subsidize a transport route that exists?
At the moment, unfortunately, as of 1 month ago, we didn't have any company that implements cargo, purely cargo. Around 2 weeks ago, it was announced that one company, Highways, registered to implement only cargo. They already purchased Boeing with around 20 tons. But what they target now, it's an easier market. They target Russia. And in our case, it's very important to diversify our exports. Yeah. By diversification of export, we also talking about the making our quality higher. Because for Europe, for Gulf countries, we have a higher set of standardization and harmonization we need to go through. Lab analysis that we need to do that we otherwise wouldn't have done. And these things will help us to be more competitive as well. The other thing that we've identified and we're working on right now is the possibility to implement ISO standards utilization for the companies that will help them to have the management system and business processes system that will optimize their cost model when they produce certain thing, and that will minimize their costs. And on the other hand, the companies that are ready to export to Japan, to Korea, to US, to European countries, in those retail chain, in the retail chains of those countries, they require to have certain lab analysis that we otherwise don't have. And these lab analyses are quite expensive. For one set of products you send, it's around $400, $500, irrespective of the kind of, if you send 12 bottles of wine or 2 pallets of bottle of wine, it will be the same price. And you need to do this constantly every time you send it. Wow. So the second time, third time, fourth time. And our hypothesis is if we assist those producers in the first year when they send smaller amounts to those countries to have this analysis, because this is another issue that they don't want to delve into. Then when they have a higher amount of products, higher volume already exporting to those countries, this amount will obviously be smaller for them in the bigger amount of money they earn.
Makes sense. Hovsep, we mentioned the external factors. Let's talk about the internal ones a little bit. Anyone who's ever tried to import any kind of, who tried to bring anything into Armenia has had the astounding misfortune of dealing with the customs process in Armenia. And there is no better word than incompetence to describe these people. You don't have to agree with me because you're a little bit more important than I am, but what is being done on this end? We understand that it is expensive to import pieces and then have it shipped through Georgia and then come to Armenia. But knowing that we can control these factors, why doesn't the government slash as much import costs as physically possible, or customs duties on raw materials that people can then use to assemble and create higher quality products that can then be re-exported?
Since we touched upon this problem as well, and we have a legislative package change on this.
Is it destroy that entire customs committee, replace them by an app? Because I would vote for that, yeah.
There is a system. There is the one window system now operational, but for our audience to understand better where the issue comes from, when you want to export a product, one of the process that you need to go through is to show that this product is not of dual purpose. And by dual purpose, I mean that, let's say, if it's a knife, that it's not a knife that can kill people, but it's a knife that you will use in the kitchen. Very, very simple analogy. Usually, it refers to the engineering products because they can be used for the military purposes. Yeah. The same goes when you import a certain product that you use in your engineering process, in your hardware development. Again, you need to undergo through the pretty much similar procedure, but to show that it's a product of not military use. This is a process that is existing in all the countries. It's export control and import control, and it's a standard procedure. The main issue is to make this process fast and understandable.
Yeah.
What we have right now,
because it's long and opaque right now.
What we have right now, when we want to export certain thing, if me and you have exported already a glass and a computer, I don't know that you've exported computer, but the customs body knows. So what our offer was, if this computer has already been recognized on the level of your country as a product of non-dual use, and if me want to export the same computer, you don't say to me, go and bring the expertise document that it's not a dual use. You simply do it automatically, that, you know, I've checked with another person that this product is of non-dual use. And this means you don't need an expertise paper. This is what we try to change in the law, to say that if this principle is adhered to, if as a country, doesn't matter who imported it, we've imported this chip, this product, this raw material, and this has undergone the expertise once, you don't need to do it every time someone else imports it. You simply need to embed in the system, in the part where you write out what model you import or what model you export. When you write out the name and the model, it simply spits out the algorithm that you don't need expertise and you can move forward. Right now, you can't do this.
Yeah.
Right now, you need every time to do the same expertise, and every expertise is 60,000 AMD. Yeah. And imagine if you do the little prototypes, that's what our engineering companies do. Every time you export it, 60,000.
Yeah.
Every time you import it, 60,000. And when we do the calculation, again, we talked with around 90 from 90 to 100 engineering companies, because they are in our council as well. They usually spend per year on their prototypes, import and exports, around 600,000 drums, where in reality they could have spent only 60,000 drums.
Yeah.
And when we calculated how much it will cost to integrate this IT solution in the one window system that customs have, it will require much less money than the amount of administrative fees and processes and time wasting that the business undergoes.
So this is in the two. Sorry, Hovsep, the time wasting thing is also, it's a big factor that's severely under, I would say, under considered when it comes to doing business in Armenia. Anyone I've ever met who has to deal with customs, they know they need a full day, because they're going to have idiotic paperwork, circular stuff to do, go back and forth to different offices because they're always at the wrong one. No one has any answers. And I'll give you a very specific example. There's a charity over here who are run by some friends of mine. And what they do is they build 3D printed prosthetics for our wounded veterans from the Artsakh wars. And in order to even just bring this stuff in, the raw materials to then 3D print it and make it so that our guys can finally walk and have limbs, it's an absolute nightmare. It's prohibitively expensive. Like, thank God they're able to somehow navigate it through donations and so on. But this is choking small businesses. So even on our end, it's just from the question of efficiency. And I'll finish with a very, very simple legislation that was passed recently in Ukraine, where Ukraine, just like us, in a life or death situation, just because we're comfortable in Yerevan now, it doesn't mean we're out of the woods. But the Ukrainian government just unilaterally decided that anything that has dual use purpose can come in without any customs fees, could just come into Ukraine and people can use it. So we haven't made it easier on ourselves from our end. Yes, we're in a tough situation, but there seems to be this kind of slow dragging our feet. Well, this is the way things are, especially when it comes to certain ministries. And the case in point is when it comes to customs.
I would say this principle that I talked about of shortening the administrative procedure and the process that will make it cheaper. This has already been discussed. It's the legislative package. It has already been circulated. Nice. And last week we discussed this with Deputy Prime Minister. He's very supportive of the idea. Good. And he wants to take it even further for the more global model to work. I wouldn't say more details now because it's still in the discussion.
Give me some good news, man. Give me some good news.
But the other package is at the moment circulated, and I believe this will navigate the process to become easier.
Good. Yeah, from the look, I wanted to talk about the finance, the banking sector as well, but I mean in general, it's pretty obvious, right? We're a small country, we're a small market. We do have some edge over competing countries that we can exploit, but it needs to be as simple as physically possible. We need to cut as much red tape as physically possible. We need to cut as much taxation, as much cost on businesses as physically possible, right? For lack of a better example, the Irish model. They had a young English-speaking population. They said, okay, big companies, you want to employ a bunch of our young guys? No problem. You pay zero tax. Come here. We need to do this. We need to do things on that level, because what I'm hearing repeatedly from friends of mine in the business community, especially foreigners, is that and look, Armenians might not like to hear this. Our language is beautiful, our alphabet is exceptional, but it's also a hindrance. If you want to work in a global market, English has to be prioritized. You have to have English, you have to be able to do paperwork in English, you have to be able to file taxes in English. You can say, well, this is Armenian. Okay, no problem. We can stay poor. It's as simple as that. There's a scientifically proven direct correlation between the level of English spoken in a country and its wealth. We want to get richer, we have to standardize English. So anyway, that's my, what are you doing in those directions? I would like to know if you agree with me or if you don't think so.
We can't really do much on English, but when it comes to financial markets, there are some areas that we work on, especially on the derivative instrument markets, because when we look at our legislation, our stock market regulations, it seems very conservative, and we need to cope up with the developments that are on the way. And at the moment, frankly speaking, we do things that we should have been doing around 10, 15 years ago. At the moment, we're working on the big reform on the options markets, derivative instruments, that will help those who want to invest through options in stock market or through options in the real estate, or use options when it comes to the buying stocks.
Do you mean local individuals or on a company level?
Them.
Can I give you an example on that? What the UK does is, if you are investing money in startups or on the stock market, if I'm not mistaken, but definitely when it comes to technology and startups, you can actually get a tax exemption for that amount, and I think it's up to 30%. So you're essentially incentivizing people here to invest money in our companies and our startups and so on, and to get access to these funds. That would be fantastic for Armenia.
That is something that is discussed, but first we need to have these instruments in place. So in our legislation, we don't have any reference to options whatsoever.
Of course.
We don't have the reference for the startups, when even if usually it is done in Delaware because it's better legislation, it's known, etc. But we've had the cases where the startups wanted to attract money here and to do it in our legislation. And usually in the startups, in the pre-seed round, they do it through the SAFE agreements, simplified agreement for future equity. And we don't have this agreement in our legislation. This is something, again, that we worked on, the reform on this. It's been passed already with the financial committee of the government. So hopefully soon it will be fully approved by the government and then approved by the parliament. And when we had some guests from different countries, journalists that want to cover the IT landscape, they were very positively surprised that this kind of developments already started in Armenia, because region-wise, nobody has the SAFE agreement, nobody has the options agreements, etc. And obviously, region-wise, we're a step ahead in our reforms. But I don't want us to be considered and to compete region-wise. We can easily compete with Eastern Europe when it comes to tech startups and tech investments. So that's where our goal lies.
So does that mean so having these SAFE agreements gives an extra layer of legal protection for anyone who wants to invest here?
They can
or move capital here.
That they can do through an easier agreement investment in the startups in Armenia. Before they would have to, try to find the way around the articles within the code, the legislative code, to approximate somehow what SAFE stands for, which is Simplified Agreement for Future Equity. So simply you kind of invest money and let the startup grow, and then at some point you turn this investment into an equity, into the stock, or you don't do, if in case it's not a successful startup. That's the flexible mechanism that usually is used by the startups. But then when you go to our legislation, usually the investments are done through increasing of kanonadраkan capital, etc. So it's a bit, when you talk to the US people, where the kanonadраkan capital is not in place at all. They don't have such thing, you know. It's redundant for them. They don't. I mean, whatever is done for the sake of the fashion, for the sake of the tick boxes, this is what not quite understandable in the US community, especially when the diaspora Armenians come and want to do the investments.
So inefficient. It's so backward. Hovsep, man, this was a really, really enlightening conversation. Thanks for hopping on with us.
Thank you. Thank you too.
Thanks again for watching. This has been Pat from Civilnet, and we'll speak with you very soon.